Here is the Crescendo Music Education Podcast, episode number 20. That's a nice big round number. 20. This podcast is being recorded on the lands of the Turrbal people. I acknowledge them as the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. They were the first music makers on this land. In this episode, I chat to Kate Williams, an associate professor at QUT. I think you're going to love listening to her journey, her professional journey, and her work with RAMSR. It's so wonderful, has great implications for our work in the music classroom. Her nuggets of fabulous are, fabulous. And a nice mic dropping moment when she gets on her soapbox at the end. I'm sure you will love this chat with Kate Williams. Hello, I would like to welcome Kate Williams to the Crescendo Podcast. Hello, Kate.
Hello, Deb. How are you?
Oh, I am fabulous though. Winter lurgies, but apart from that, all great. Yeah.
I understand.
Now, I would like to start by reading your bio, and then we'll just have a little chat after that. So, Kate Williams is an associate professor in the School of Early Childhood and Inclusive Education at QUT. She leads the Centre for Child and Family Studies and is academic lead, in brackets, engagement, for her school. Kate is also a member of the Centre for Child Health and Wellbeing. So far, Kate's bio is all about all these things that we believe we do in the music classroom, isn't it?
Totally, yeah.
Okay, Kate's research aims to address inequities in health, wellbeing and educational outcomes that often arise due to early childhood adversity. She is an expert on children's development of self-regulation and the parenting, educational and intervention contexts that support such, along with the developmental outcomes associated with children's self-regulatory functioning. Now, there's lots of big words in there, but I reckon this is something that we do so well in music, but we just probably, we're probably not aware of what we do. Yeah.
I think so. Sometimes it's about the language. Which is what a lot of the work I do with music educators is just highlighting and elevating the things that they're already doing into that kind of developmental space.
I love it. Okay. This includes children's regulation of attention, emotion, executive function, and their sleep behaviours. Wow, they are big things. She is also involved in program evaluation and interested in the measurement of children's development and wellbeing. Kate is also a registered music therapist and so is interested in the ways that music can be used to support children's development. Kate's evidence-based intervention, rhythm and movement for self-regulation, which we just call RAMSR here, is delivered by over 1,000 adults internationally. And I've done just a workshop in RAMSR. I have a close colleague, Deb Bryden, shout out Deb, who's done more intensive study, and we chat about it a fair bit. But I will confess it's one of these things I really need to get more into because there is...
On the list, Deb, we need to get you into the full course. In fact, we're thinking about running some full days in Brisbane soon. So
okay, put me down.
Let's talk more. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
Because I think it's not just a matter... Okay, I'm just sweeping generalization warning here, right? I think we do a lot of this really good stuff in music, but a lot of it we just do, I don't want to say naturally, but
instinctually.
Maybe. Part of it is the nature of music. Part of it is the nature of good early childhood practice. I just think that we're not aware of what we're doing. And if we were made more aware of what we were doing, we could do it more... what's the word that I'm meaning?
Intentionally.
Yes, intentionally. Exactly.
Yeah, and you could tell everyone else about everything that you're doing. Yeah.
Yes, which is actually one of the things that we will get to talk about is advocacy and how we can communicate to people the importance of what happens in the music room. So this will also link really well to that advocacy piece. So I think we should start with you talking about RAMSR a little more generally for us.
Sure. So RAMSR stands for Rhythm and Movement for Self-Regulation. And this program came about first in around 2016 because I'd had a career as a music therapist, working with very young families primarily. And then I did a research master's that was on music therapy, but then completely pivoted away from music to look at social emotional development and cognitive development in early childhood for my PhD. So I'd spent 3 years not looking at music, but instead just looking at children's self-regulation development. And I came to the end of that, and I literally said to my mentor, Professor Donna Berthelsen, what do I do now? I don't know what to do next. You know, I got a job at QUT as an academic, but I had to decide on what my next research project was. And Donna said to me, well, Kate, isn't it about time that you put the strands of your career together now? And what she meant by that is, why don't you bring your background in music therapy to now your knowledge of developmental psychology and the ways children develop their self-regulation, and put it together into something useful. And I was like, well, yeah, I should have thought of that myself, but it took somebody else, you know, to have that light bulb moment. So RAMSR came about, which is a program designed that to bring in all of the neuroscience about how our brain perceives rhythm and beat and how those systems work with the motor system. And it packages up in a way that even people with no music background at all can deliver for young children, so that they get that practice in rhythm and movement. And embedded in all of those activities are executive function and self-regulation practice. So that's what RAMSR is, and we've studied it now in a couple of experimental designs and have good effects for children who participate in RAMSR compared to those who don't. Show steeper growth in school readiness, attentional, behavioural and cognitive regulation, and reduced behavioural problems. So thumbs up. It was worth doing. Yeah, so now we're training as many people as would like to access the resources and use them in their work. And even though it is targeted, Deb, for those who don't have any music background, we actually get a whole lot of music educators and music therapists in the course. And what they're saying is some of those things that you were saying, Deb. It's like, yeah, this is kind of the stuff that we're already doing. And certainly there's nothing new under the sun. Like, it's not like we invented body percussion games or that kind of stuff. But we've given people the language around them and target skills. What are you actually targeting here in terms of the non-musical skills that you're building? How can you observe that these are happening for the children? And just speaking to a music educator down the road the other day, and she was saying, oh, the language, now I can talk about what I'm doing, and I know what I can see inside the brain, and I can work out what's happening. So that's really exciting. That's what RAMS is doing.
Yes. Oh, well, I definitely have to get stuck in. Sorry.
Yeah,
and
we need to get you inside that course.
Yeah, we will do that. Is the thing that's in my head at the moment is, are these difficult things to measure? These outcomes, the positive outcomes for children, like you see it in the music room, and you know, is measuring an issue?
Not really. You'd be surprised. We've been researching self-regulation and executive function for a couple of decades now. So we've got pretty good measures. I mean, they're not perfect. No measures are ever perfect. One of the best measures that we've found in RAMSR is actually a kind of fairly systematic, just a one-page scaled report that any teacher or parent can do based on their observations of children. And you know, some in the scientific world might criticize that as not being a direct assessment of children. But in fact, we know through the research that teachers are very good, as you know, Deb, at observing how well children are able to pay attention, regulate their emotions and behaviors. And their reports of the ways children do that and grow in those behaviors are incredibly predictive of things way down the track, like NAPLAN, school completion, all those kinds of things. So teachers know what they're seeing, they know how to observe it. we give them this one page of scales, and it works quite beautifully. It's not hard to measure.
Wow. So is it the sort of thing that obviously we'd like to see embedded in our classrooms, starting in prep?
Yeah, well, prior to prep, I would say, but yes.
Oh gosh, yes. If you had access to pre-prep, I guess I'm just thinking
Exactly.
of my work.
Yes.
Yes, but
Yeah.
you just embed it across the board. It would be that sort of thing, and if you're lucky enough to have a music specialist, the specialist teacher would enhance. Or do you think it might also be worth putting in almost like intervention programs as well? Like, so in a school, if we're talking about like a state school in Queensland that starts at 4-year-olds, it's sort of obvious fairly quickly who are the kids that really are need that little extra help with
Support.
self-regulation, that extra
Yep.
support.
Yep.
Do you think forming some like a really cool intervention program with those kids would help, or would you recommend it more just across the board and those kids would be swept up in the across the board?
It's an interesting question, Deb, and I think we would need to I'd love to do some research and try both approaches. So far, our research has been universal approaches where the whole group receives RAMSR, but they have been in very low socioeconomic communities. So that's where many of the children, have many gains to make in self-regulation.
Yes.
Let's put it that way. There's a lot of room for growth. So there's a couple of pros and cons about those different approaches, I think. We do know that those more competent peers in the group can be really helpful for students.
Yes.
So if you think about a universal approach, then you're going to have those kind of different levels of developmental capabilities, and those more competent peers are going to be potentially great role models. You'll also get that, one of the side benefits I think you get because RAMSR gets groups moving in synchrony with each other is this idea of interpersonal synchrony, which actually builds social cohesion and empathy. So in terms of inclusive environments, that can be some of the really nice ideas about doing it universally.
Mm-hmm.
You can also have different levels of participation within all of the activities. So you might have children who are, yeah, I'm all over this, this is easy, they're experiencing success, but you can challenge them in a slightly different way, give them leadership roles while supporting the others who aren't quite there yet.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do think there's also there could be a role for those additional support intervention groups. I guess it just depends on the sort of philosophy that you want to take around inclusion or around more intensive supports. And we just don't have the answer research-wise yet. We do have some music therapists using RAMSR for those more intensive end of supports and finding that works. So I guess it depends on the context, Deb. And, everyone who trains in RAMSR has a license to just kind of use it how it suits their context, pull it apart, put it back together again in a different way, use it with one individual children, use it with big groups, small groups. So it's all up for grabs.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, plenty of possibilities ticking away. I love it.
Definitely.
And you've had an interesting career. You gave us that bit of a summary, how you've worked in those different areas. What would you consider to be a highlight or highlights? You're allowed to have more than one of your journey. Well, just generally music education, but also in your other more general fields. What would be a highlight, do you think?
Oh gosh, there is so many actually. So one early on, I did begin in music education, and I was in a school, a secondary school, with a very very small music program. So putting together a balanced ensemble was next to impossible, but we managed to cobble one together, and do the school's first musical that I was musical director of, and so that was really exciting because it wasn't a big production because the school just didn't have the students, the staff, or the resources. But we gave those students that opportunity and did a short season of that musical, and that was great fun. I did have to rope in a few old uni mates to kind of fill the gaps in the ensemble and that kind of thing that we didn't have, but that was great fun. That was a real experience. I think I'll always remember also my very first clinical placement as a student music therapist, where I worked in the burns unit at the then Royal Children's Hospital, and had a case there, a young toddler who had been in a car that had kind of spontaneously combusted, and she'd experienced really severe burns. And so my job was to work with her in terms of rehabilitation. So, of course, the physios and the occupational therapists are trying to get into this, get this young girl to do exercises with her very burnt hands, and that's painful and not something a toddler wants to do. But give her a castanet or a shaker, play some guitar, play some of her favourite songs. She would then, participate in some of those rehab things with that sort of distraction and that element of music that was wrapped around some of the therapies that other people were trying to do with her. As well as using music therapy as distraction during her baths when they were changing dressings, and it was very painful. So that was something I'll always remember as, one of my highlights in terms of how music therapy can support young children. I did also love, as when I was working for Sing and Grow, I had a couple of programs in the Brisbane Women's Prison, and where women were living there with their young infants and children. And I'll always remember trying to get my guitar and percussion case, through security there. I think they thought I was smuggling in something ridiculous, and the guitar wouldn't go in the scanner, so it had to go in that standing up in the body scanner and be body scanned. And it was a bit of fun. That it was a real privilege to be able to work in there in a very unique environment where children are living in unusual circumstances with their mothers. And I've had so many of those opportunities along the way, working with parents in the child protection system who are trying to rebuild those bonds with their children who may have been removed and may be coming back into their custody. So lots of highlights. Certainly the fact that now sometimes I will visit a centre for a different reason, visit an early childhood centre or a school, or be talking to a teacher, and they've heard about RAMSR and they're doing RAMSR, and it's because they've been inside one of our courses. I can't keep track of everyone who's in there because every year we have hundreds and hundreds of people enrol and do the course, but it's just so amazing to then go out there and have somebody say to me, "Oh, have you heard of this thing called RAMSR? Like, look what we do in our class." And I go, "Oh yeah, that's awesome."
Yeah, I've heard of that.
So even a friend the other day who runs a beauty business out of her own home, she said, "Oh, I was waxing somebody's legs the other day," and she said, "Yeah, I've been doing this in my classroom. It's this thing." And she said, "Oh, that my friend, developed that." So they're all really great highlights. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. I tell you what, the burns unit and the women's prison and oh my heavens, it sounds all a little bit heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be. I guess the way that I handle doing that work is knowing that, well, if I wasn't there doing that work, those things would still be happening. That child would still be in hospital burnt, and those children would still be living in prison with their mothers. Yeah. It wouldn't change anything if I kind of couldn't be there or refused to be there. So I guess I just tried to add value, where I can, and now that I'm, I suppose, more further on in my career, I'm trying to look for leadership roles in. For example, I'm co-convening a working group in the Thriving Queensland Kids Partnership, trying to make really systems level change for children in Queensland to support their development and improve wellbeing outcomes. So I think you gain those experiences and then, look for opportunities to make changes at the systems level that will make a difference.
Oh, wow. That's so lovely to hear. Oh, it's almost a bit emotional, isn't it? Okay, yeah. But thank you for doing that, because we need people like you to be fighting for the kids.
We're all trying. I mean, there's a big group like you do with your advocacy work, Deb. All we can do is keep trying and chipping away, can't we?
Yeah, we can only do what we can do. Yes.
That's right. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Now, can you tell us about any people or particular people who've been influential in your life? Obviously, the lady who suggested you meld your two areas together, that was a pretty big influence. Who else would you like to
Yeah.
mention?
Yeah, so definitely Professor Donna Berthelsen, mentor I talked about before. I met her long before my PhD when she was evaluating a Sing and Grow program that I was helping to lead. And then she supervised both my master's and PhD, and then, basically told me what I should do when I grow up, which is always very helpful when somebody else can see from the outside what you should do. She's still a great colleague and a mentor that I work with a lot. I guess personally, thinking about, my mum and my grandmother, I come from a line of strong women, I would say, but they both grew up in kind of highly adverse and disadvantaged circumstances, and both worked hard to break that cycle, and particularly my mum, providing me with all of the opportunities that I possibly could, particularly music. I mean, nobody else before me in my family was necessarily musical at all. Nobody had had a musical education. In fact, before me, nobody had completed high school, Deb.
Yes, yes.
So I would have been the first in my family to complete high school and go to university. But I think what happened is mum kind of accidentally got me a second-hand little, awful now, but the little electronic keyboard when I was quite small, and I was working out playing things by ear, and she thought, goodness, I don't know where she got that from. But then the opportunity came up, of course, because out of our amazing Queensland instrumental music program that is the envy of the world. I went to a state school and was able to pick up an instrument in grade 5, I think.
Yeah, which instrument?
Saxophone. But of course, I'd done recorder first, Deb, the good old recorder. Now, the recorder is much maligned, but I always tell people it's the beginning of everything. Like, don't knock the recorder.
No, and if anybody has heard the recorder played well, you would never say that. And even in classrooms, this I challenge anybody. If you let the kid out in the playground with their recorder, it's going to sound awful, obvious. But really, in classrooms with a trained music educator, it's going to sound lovely. And
you're getting the basics for all children with an inexpensive instrument. So anyway, I started off recorder with my music educator in the classroom. Joined the little recorder marching band that we had back in those days.
Yes.
With my little epaulets and my little uniform, socks pulled up high to the knees, and then saxophone, and I guess coming back to mum. All of that, of course, was enabled through the state school system. But of course, there's only so far you can go with that. And in the end, I was loving it so much. My mum would have scraped together the cash to get me private music lessons. She paid for my AMEB exams to go through on, saxophone and flute. She bought me a professional level instrument in year 10. And those were not easy things financially for her to do, but she just supported me all the way, and I'm just so grateful for that. So that's the person I would name.
Wow. Yes. Thank you. Thanks, Kate's mum and grandma. And thanks, how lovely that Queensland and the state system was part of that. That is so wonderful to hear. Can I ask which school? Where did you go to school?
I went to Redland Bay State School and then Cleveland District High School.
Right. Go the state system. We can't lose what we've got, can we?
Definitely not. Yep.
Anyway, we shan't go off on that tangent. But anybody listening? We could, yeah. Anyone listening, go on, get in there.
Queensland is the envy of Australia and the world. So I've got relatives down south who look at our Queensland state system and come up and listen to my children play in their state high school concerts, and just cannot believe the sheer size of the program, the professionalism of the program. We cannot back away from this, and it's not about creating thousands and thousands of professional musicians, although some students will end up there, but it's what it's doing for us developmentally, socially. We just have to continue.
Yes, thank you so much. I could not agree more. I want to jump through the screen and high five. Yeah. We can't lose it. We just can't lose it. So thank you for reinforcing that. So if we talk about gratitude, because on these podcasts, I always like talking about gratitude because sometimes, the turkeys get you down, things get a little bit tough, and you've got to remind yourself, wow, we've got so much to be grateful for. Would there be anything specifically you'd like to list for which you are grateful?
Gosh, that's a really long list. I mean, I've already talked about some of the opportunities that have been afforded to me by our state school system and by my mum. Um, you know, and the mentorship and generosity that others provide across my career that I have tried to really pass on. The team around me at the moment, who've been developing RAMSR alongside me and supporting it, are just amazing. So a big shout out to Rebecca Eager, Sally Savage, Kathy Nielsen, and Laura Bentley, who here at QT provide the support for the research for RAMSR. We co-develop it together. We really co-own it and run the whole thing. So without their support, that I'm so grateful for, it wouldn't have happened the way it has, for sure. And also one more person I really have to thank would have to be my darling husband. We've been together for over 20 years now, some date. And he took his long service leave back in 2013, not so we could go on some amazing trip or anything like that, but so I could finish writing my PhD thesis. So he took
That's
his long
true love. That is true
I
love.
know. He took his long service leave. He looked after our two young children. We had two under school age children, looked after them, ran the whole house so that I could write and get that thing done. So, thanks,
Yeah.
Tim. That's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Gratitude to him. Yes.
Yeah.
I've got you. Okay. Now we're up to my nuggets of fabulous.
Yep.
All right. So, advice. I know you get to work with at a different sort of level to us coal-faced people that just has the sausage factory of 25, 30 kids at a time.
Yep.
But you would have a different view from where you're standing and where you work most of the time. I'd love to know if you have any tips, tricks, thoughts, inspiration,
Yep.
advice to give
Yep.
to people listening.
Yeah, a couple of things. So let's start with educators' own well-being. So I reckon I have a think about the music that you're listening to on your way to work or on your way home from work or at home. I mean, are you thinking about that? Are you thinking about your musical diet and what makes you feel good? And what sets your arousal levels and energy levels for the day? Or are you just throwing on the radio kind of thing, which is fine. I do that all the time as well. I get lazy with it. But if I really feel like I need a bit of an extra boost or a bit of me time, could I think about there's something from my musical menu that might just put me in that right mood or the right frame of mind to hit the next class or to hit that kind of difficult day or difficult timetable that I've got. So look after your own musical diet and your own well-being, that's for sure, number one. Number two, can you have more fun? I mean, I think we have sometimes forgotten how to have fun, right? And if the music educators can't have fun, then nobody's having fun, can I just say? So I know there's serious curriculum to get through, there's reluctant learners, there's self-regulation challenges, but can we find ways to have fun alongside and with the children?
Yes.
Can we do something where we let the music be the teacher and we can become a participant with alongside the children, because that creates the kind of different relationship that music educators can have with children, that classroom teachers who must always be the leader, must always be at the front, must always be instructing, they don't necessarily get the opportunity to be music community members alongside children. So what could you do? Could you dance with them,
Yes.
alongside them? Can you be a participant? And number three, I'll stick to three, would be when the children, walk into your room, can you do a 2-minute rhythm and movement activity of some sort that it acts as a barometer of where children are at with their neural organization, right? So if you can observe for a couple of minutes some sort of beat synchronization activity where your children are needing to move to the beat or something like that, and if you can you'll get your finger on the pulse and clock who's really having a lot of trouble getting on that beat and staying on that beat. You might then clock that they're not quite ready to learn that day, or something's going on for them. Depending on how well you know the children, maybe they're normally on the beat, but today they're off, or maybe they're just kind of off all the time, and that is developmentally appropriate when children are really young. They're not going to be on the beat, but music educators know when that kind of sort of starts to kick in naturally. And I just think that gives you basically what I would call a window to the brain. 60 seconds, 120 seconds, couple of minutes of some sort of fun beat synchronization, warm-up movement activity. You've got a window into their brains at that point, and you might just see where everyone's at and take it from there.
They are definitely nuggets of fabulous. And yes, I could not agree more. We really do have to look after our own well-being. And that idea of a musical diet or a musical menu, I like that. I have to confess that for me, at this point, I very rarely listen to music for me, like ever.
It's really hard to find the time, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. And it's also partly a choice. I want to listen to, there's some fabulous podcasts that I love. Yeah. And, so I guess it's also a choice, but I should remind myself to maybe have a look at my musical diet. And the more fun, I just think that's such an advantage of having the job that we've got. We get to play the games with the children. We get to be just one of them. We get to be out as well if the beat happens to land on us or whatever. So, but that more fun and the 2-minute activity at the beginning, I love.
Right.
Thank you for your nuggets. Yeah. Now, advocacy. We've already talked about it, but really, everywhere in the world, I'm sure, music teachers at some point have to justify their position, whether it's even saving the state of music education in a system or just in your school. What advice would you have? Could you give us around advocacy? And I'm sure that some of it will be becoming aware of the great things that we do in classroom around things like self-regulation, well-being. But how do we, I guess it's increasing awareness of that, but also communicating that. So what sort of advice would you give us?
I think the more you can arm yourself with knowledge and language, as you say, Deb, and even hard evidence, right? So some people will want some sort of hard evidence, and that can be collected through things like talking to classroom teachers about how children are when before music as opposed to after music, because they theoretically might go back to the classroom with a different level of learning arousal and a different level of kind of interpersonal synchrony and group cohesion. So I think collecting some data, arming yourself with the knowledge and the language to talk about the non-musical aspects. Now, this can seem such a shame, I think, to some people. So if you're teaching mathematics, you don't have to justify that as well as learning mathematics, you're actually learning, problem solving and spatial reasoning, and you're kind of doing all this other stuff. But somehow we've got to the point with music curriculum where music curriculum is, learning pitch, melody, harmony, notation isn't enough. We have to be justifying all of the other things that this is actually improving. But I think that's just where we're at, and we're just going to have to accept it. Yes. I mean, the jury is out in terms of it is absolutely clear. Sorry, it's not out. The jury is clear that on balance, music education, at least a couple of years of music education, started relatively young, is providing lifelong brain changes in terms of neural architecture, just the size of the brain, and this supports language, development. It supports all other areas of development as well. I think in terms of social, synchrony, particularly coming out of COVID, where we're all kind of locked down and we never moved together. We weren't even in the same space. I think we've got a real place now for arguing around how instrumental ensembles, choirs, dancing together, any of those things that you do in a group with rhythm as support will actually be rebuilding those social bonds and improving empathy. So there's scientific experiments where we do things like take some toddlers and have them move in time with a stranger, and then take another group of toddlers and have them move out of time with a stranger. And those toddlers who have moved in time with the stranger are more helpful, more empathetic, a better playmate than those who moved out of time. So I tell, one of my theories is why those all black, I don't even watch football. I don't even know how I know about them. I know about them because of the haka, because I love the haka, right?
Yes,
so, that all black team, apparently they're pretty amazing at rugby, right? And I reckon one of the reasons is they play like an amazing team because they do that haka at the beginning and they move in time and rhythmically with each other. So literally their brain synchrony is locked onto each other and they play amazingly. So, Australia should learn from its traditional owners and develop some sort of group synchronous movement tradition, and maybe we'd win more games as well. I don't know. That's bad. If there are any sport lovers around, listening to you, Dev, please forgive me for my lack of sport knowledge.
No, I love it, and I'm with you. The haka's my only favourite bit too. I love it. And yeah, we should come up with that and just come up with an Australian version. And I love that.
Our First Nations people probably already have many, and we've got a lot to learn there, I think, from First Nations ways of being and using movement, rhythm, and movement, for social cohesion. I think there's a lot we can learn there.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. That sounds like another PhD for you.
Yeah, probably husband would say no. But yes, somebody's PhD. If you'd like to do it, come see me.
Oh, I love it. Okay, Kate, I've really, really, really enjoyed this chat, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast. And to finish off, though, I'd like to invite you to get on your soapbox, and you get to finish the interview by telling the world something that you really want to tell them, the most important message you'd like to give them. No pressure, just
gosh,
I know you've said so many really important things, and hopefully lots of people after this will go look up RAMSR. Oh, we'll put some links in the show notes, of course.
Yeah, great. Just Google RAMSR QT.
Yeah, where would it
RAMSR?
Where would it be best for people to catch you if they want to connect with you? Obviously, they'll Google RAMSR and we'll put links, but do you have a favourite platform or somewhere to connect?
I'm on LinkedIn professionally, so you can look me up on LinkedIn for sure. Yeah, but always happy to chat with people. You'll find my email on the QUT website if you just Google Kate Williams QUT, and the whole team's profiled on the RAMSR QUT website. You can enrol in the course online there. And we'll also be offering some in-person days soon, hopefully. So, yeah, I'd love to connect with anyone who's interested. In terms of my soapbox, gosh, look, I'm all around. A country like Australia should not have the inequities that we do. And for some of us who are privileged to live in, the world that I live in largely, which is kind of a majority white, middle class, well-educated world, it's easy to not really acknowledge or know about the inequities that are out there. But we've got, older women and young children are the most rapidly rising population of homeless in Australia. We have inequitable access to healthcare and education in rural and remote communities. We don't pay our educators of any kind enough money, Deb. We don't acknowledge them as the brain builders that they are, both music educators and other educators. So we have a lot of work to do to make this a more equitable society. We kind of talk about Australia with everyone having a fair go, but unfortunately it's just not the case. So we need to be cognizant in everything that we do about that, and it's one of the reasons that the RAMSR vision has been absolutely strong from the get-go, that it's about all adults, no matter where they are and which children they work with, having these skills and confidence to use this kind of low resource, low cost program wherever they are. And that's what we aim to do. So, and that's why we have some scholarships too, Deb. I didn't mention those, but we offer free course access on application to people from developing nations, rural and remote Australia, pre-service, students of education or music who might not be able to afford that course fee. So I think, my soapbox is just never, ever, ever assume that there's equity out there. And what are you doing to address inequity?
I love that. We have to finish on that mic drop. Thank you. Yeah, mic drop. Thank you so much, Kate.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time and the invitation, Deb.
As we know, laughter relieves stress. Don't lose sight of the funny side of life. Why do bananas have to use sunscreen? Because they're afraid they might peel. Thank you so much for watching our Crescendo Music Education podcast. For more information about all things Crescendo, including membership and music education resources, visit us at crescendo.com.au. Don't forget to like and subscribe